Welcome back to the SMITE Minor League. We're on the European side of things, and my name is John Finch. I have a guest with me here, but wait, I'm not going to tell you yet, guys. Guess who it is? Who did I get to join me here today? Let's get the big reveal. Go to the wide for me. It's Anatoly Alexanok. Happy to have you here as my chair two.
Hi.
Hey. Way to live up to all the hype.
Yeah, that was quite the. I can't live up to that, Finch.
Well, this match that we're going into, this is Flashpoint versus Simplicity, and I think I'm right to at least have some energy for this one because this is a big matchup between these two teams. They're up near the top of the standings, and I think that you would have expected for these two teams to be here. Simplicity was sort of that top team from the SML EU last year, and then Flashpoint's a team that was right there with them, battling it back and forth. So this rivalry continues into Season 6.
Whoever wins this one is guaranteed into MSI, actually, because it would be Outcall Gaming not being able to catch up that team. Whoever loses, still in jeopardy of getting knocked down behind Outcall Gaming.
That's right. So a lot on the line, not just seeding, but potentially a ticket here to come to the MSI in general at all between these two squads. So certainly a big matchup, but let's zoom in a little bit more on Simplicity. I mean, this is a team that's just stacked to the brim with talent. I always consider DeathPanter as one of the centerpieces of this team, though. A little bit hard to say now that you added maniaKK to the roster, too. But he's such a consistent player from them out of that mid lane role, was, of course, in the SPL as well and did very well for himself when he was there, too, and has continued to look pretty dominant here in the minor league.
I think a lot of diversity from DeathPanter in that middle role.
Sure.
A lot of dominance in the solo lane coming out of maniaKK, another star-powered name over here, the Portuguese powerhouse coming out of F.Dot's mouth. That's why, because he loves to play aggressive gods. Genetics from time to time can easily switch it up between the Guardians and the Assassins in that support role. I think he has more of a success rate on the Guardians, so look for that today.
And I've been really impressed with Faeles. I feel like he's had a bit of a resurgent when he's able to play in that jungle role for this team. So, I mean, that's one more thing that I want to keep an eye on, too, as well, is how well he's able to pilot for this team in the jungle. Because that's the key matchup, is how these junglers are going to be going up against each other. Dzoni, in particular, over there on the side of Flashpoint, is their big centerpiece, the way I highlighted DeathPanter, who can be very strong for Simplicity. They very often give that guy the ball and say, hey, we're at the end of the game, you take the final shot. And so whoever for Simplicity is trying to slow him down, they've got the most important job.
I think they have to worry about FaraKrik potentially playing the Giannis in that mid role. Sibi can easily bring out the Sun Wukong whenever he wants to. There's just some interesting picks that Flashpoint can really bring out. Simplicity going to have to do their homework today. We'll see what they get in the result of the test.
No, and they're not wrong. I mean, you're not wrong to say that this entire Flashpoint team can be scary. We saw Sibi really stick to his guns and play that Sun Wukong multiple games in a row last week, too. So maybe you don't even have to fear it as much as they've had some struggles. I mean, to be honest, Flashpoint are on a bit of a losing streak. They've lost 2 weeks in a row now. They dropped to Simplicity and to Out Cold earlier. So Simplicity have most recently already beaten this team. So the last win, I think, was up against Queso when they played them last time. So how is this team feeling confidence-wise is another big question. They started off so hot, essentially, 6-1, and then they've lost twice in a row to bring them down to 6-3. Can they keep that trend going in a match they really need to win?
It's going to be difficult because they've already played against each other 3 times. Week number 2 went for Simplicity at 2-1. Week 4, Flashpoint won that one at 2-1. In week number 8, Simplicity finding the victory there. So this is a very important match for not just Flashpoint, but also for Simplicity to guarantee their spot in MSI.
No, you're not wrong. Simplicity coming in a little bit hotter. They've won now, I think, 3 weeks in a row that this team's been able to do. So they're feeling pretty good, and they want to try and keep that momentum going. So the pressure then on the Flashpoint to try and slow them down. Let's get to the bans and picks. Bring them up here for me, Jared, so we can take a look at who's going to be first. Simplicity in that first pick spot, and then Flashpoint going to have to respond. We saw Merlin's and King Arthur's let through last set. I wonder if that same thing's going to be happening when some of our solo laners are maniaKK and FaraKrik and DeathPanter and Sibi are the solo and mid laners this time. I doubt you want to give those guys those picks.
I'm going to have to break the fourth wall because I'm not a fan of the bans and the picks. It just doesn't roll off the tongue quite as...
It sure does.
No, it doesn't.
Let's go ahead and say it again.
No, picks and bans.
Oh, that's not right.
P's and B's.
Well, look, what are we in? What are we doing right now?
Right now we're banning.
Oh, wow. And at first
But in a compound, in an additive form,
sure.
It doesn't matter if you're picking first or banning. Right? It's not
it
like...
sure does, though, because you got to ban first, so you could pick stuff that
you're
should have been
doing
banned.
them both anyway.
Yeah, you
are. You can call them whatever you want.
I mean, the order of operations matters. A lot of good stuff still available. This is crazy. Xbalanque not getting prioritized last set, right?
Yeah, that's right. Even the Freya.
Freya wasn't getting prioritized,
Naja.
and apparently not being looked at here. King Arthur, Merlin, Achilles, it's all still on the table as Ao Kwang and Yan is banned out. These are specific to this matchup. Those are shots at Dzoni and FaraKrik in particular to try and slow them down. Jormungandr and Fafnir banned away then by Flashpoint on the other side. And by taking Serqet here first with Simplicity, a ton of good stuff is still up on the table for Flashpoint. They got to just go ahead and have a field day, I imagine.
They should. Simplicity can easily flex that in the support role for Genetics if they want to do that. To respond, they're going to go for a very passive hunter in Flashpoint. I think Kespainify should be able to get a lot of farm off, and it's not only Queso that's prioritizing the new also Flashpoint.
That's very interesting. Clearly, it's been doing well for them in the scrims, though I don't know that Warchi particularly impressed on this pick, at least to me. It made me think that it's worth being valued this highly, certainly not over the likes of something like a Merlin, as Chronos comes through next with Simplicity. So these are very curious throughout these first 4 bans. I mean, certainly some strong gods. Jing Wei, a top-tier hunter in her own right. Serqet, a very impressive jungler. But for these picks to be prioritized ahead of the likes of some of these other gods are still out there, like the Merlin, the Xbalanque, and King Arthur finally getting picked. It's very surprising.
You know what it is? These teams are experiencing so many Merlin bans in their scrims and their actual matches. Like, we haven't actually practiced Merlin. And now that it's up, they're like, do we just ban it or do we just stick to what we know? And DeathPanter from Simplicity knows hunters quite well.
That's a good point. He has had a name for himself doing the double hunter composition where he plays the hunter in the mid lane. Can still play the mages very well too. So DeathPanter, a very scary one. You're trying to decide exactly what he's going to play. He's got a ton of flex potential. As King Arthur rounds out their first half of the picks, and then on Flashpoint they round out with the Ratatoskr to give them a good amount of early pressure.
That global pressure alongside the Nuwa could be the way to clean up a few kills, especially when Jing Wei is going to be safe in her own backline. Simplicity looking for their second ban. Flashpoint still targeting out Genetics here with the Sylvanas.
Yeah, an eye towards the dual lane feels like just in general with the Chernobog ban there as well. So maybe trying to limit not just Genetics, but even what StreakUp can do if they're not sold on where this Chronos is going. Just take this other hunter off the board as Habwa and Bakasura are taken away as well. Those both feel kind of like jungle bans to me, the kind of thing that Dzoni would absolutely play. But when you don't ban Achilles, Achilles gets picked, and Achilles is pretty good.
We saw what Dimi was able to do when he got ganked. He just absolutely ran the table, was a nightmare to deal with. But the way that they responded from Frosty
their jungler
was the cripple on the Poseidon. I don't expect this to be for Dzoni on Simplicity's side, or rather for Faeles on Simplicity's side. But seeing the last set, nothing surprises me anymore.
Exactly. This Pele coming through feels much more like what we're going to be seeing from the jungle. So then likely a support Serqet then is what we're going to be seeing for Genetics as he plays something aggressive to round out their composition. They've got the Chronos very likely then for StreakUp in the hunter role as Artio comes through for Flashpoint. So then the Ratatoskr then must be what they're giving over to Dzoni and let this Achilles go over to Sibi then the solo lane.
Artio already forgotten about, I feel like, how dominant she was in Season 5 and Season 6. That cripple is still going to stop Serqet support from doing Serqet things, so especially against an Arthur. I love this Artio last pick.
I agree. Artio's still very, very much strong. A lot of strong picks, it feels like, not really being considered here in this set, so a bit surprising looking at these bans and picks. Let's go ahead, though, and get into the action. Simplicity going to be going up against Flashpoint. Game number 1, casters, it's all you.
Thank you, Finch and Tolly, for those bans and picks. A little bit different pace than what we usually have, but there were still some good ones, especially with this last selection, Artio, for Fusify. This cripple, I think, is going to really make Genetics and maniaKK regret leaving this pick open.
Could definitely put a damper on the mood when you're trying to be insanely aggressive and spin and win with King Arthur. Not really a possibility if Artio's in the way, but that's not to say that Fusify couldn't also be made the target for Simplicity. I think that there's tons of burst damage available for this squad that if Fusify isn't careful, he could definitely get turned and burned.
Dzoni on the Ratatoskr this game is almost the exact opposite of what we usually see him on. He's always these late game hyper carries, Kali, Ao Kwang. Ratatoskr is the exact opposite of that, and for me, I think that's going to be the difference here for Flashpoint potentially is how well Dzoni can play this early game.
Well, I think that that's really just going to boil down to how aggressive does Dzoni want to be in early game, but right now Dzoni actually in a spot of trouble trying to escape from Faeles, and DeathPanter might have even been forced into taken his dash secondary as opposed to the flurry of acorns.
Though did end up getting the beads away from Faeles, so a win by Flashpoint in that regard, though they did have to give up the mid-harpies. Is now looping around this right side. Dzoni gets both of these and will have his dash up soon enough to escape, I do believe. Yeah, he's out of there. Rat just a little bit too quick. He gets to start with Acorn 2, which is already more movement speed than Faeles has, at least at base, before that Magma Rush begins to happen. But Taco, the stakes are high in this one. Winner of this guaranteed to go to MSI. The loser still in a great position to qualify, but does have that threat. They have to win one more set in the final few weeks in order to make sure that they get their ticket.
Perfect timing.
And it's not going to be an easy one to come by, that's for sure. I think even for the winner of this set, there's still going to be a lot of prep involved going forward because, honestly, qualifying for MSI is really only the start. It's just like the tip of the iceberg.
Sibi takes quite a bit of damage from maniaKK and Genetics. A nice little double taunt there from Genetics. You're right. I mean, making it to MSI is not the end of the road by any stretch. Then you get the reward of playing against the other best SML teams in the world, some of the best console teams in the world, and then if you beat those, you get to go on and play against the best of the best in the world. So I don't think that these teams are expecting to just make it to MSI and then do a whole lot of nothing once they make it there, especially a team like Simplicity that has so much experience in those sorts of environments. I'm anticipating that they're expecting a bit more.
And Simplicity is definitely a team, I think, that is aiming to challenge those at the highest level. They're not there to really take their chances with the other SML or SCL teams. In their eyes, I think they've already solidified themselves to a standard of SPL caliber.
I mean, maniaKK and Faeles in the SPL last year. DeathPanter, Genetics, StreakUp, guys who were right on the precipice, so I think that's fair. On the other side for Flashpoint, this was the team that was the best at the end of last year in the minor league, but then when it came time for the playoffs and qualifying to go to LAN, Dzoni wasn't there, and neither was Flashpoint as a whole. I mean, there was a considerable drop-off without him. Hopefully, if they do make it to the midseason invitational, Dzoni will be there and ready to show what he can do at LAN.
But again, that's all dependent on making it through this set first. And so far, pretty standard stuff, I think, from both of these teams. We saw Genetics and Fusify spending ample time over in solo lane, really just trying to help their solo laners continue to establish pressure. Dzoni, though, for the first gang onto maniaKK. maniaKK already falling incredibly low, but his shell's going to bail him out for the moment.
Yeah, it might just be for the moment exactly, as Dzoni still lurking. maniaKK is going to fall. That's first blood, but Faeles answers back onto Sibi pretty quickly. Volcanic Lightning already used. Kraken available, though, and Dzoni gets gobbled up. DeathPanter with number 2 for Simplicity.
Dzoni, I think, knew what he was getting himself into, and that's where the hesitation came through. And it's not so much that he was waiting out the duration of the shell, but I think it takes a lot to decide to commit diving towards a T2 tower when you understand that maniaKK's probably already going to get away otherwise. So Dzoni, I think, maybe prioritizing that first blood bounty over the possible repercussions.
Yeah, I mean, if Dzoni gets the first blood and then it's only him who dies, it's not too bad, right? Because you got first blood and it's fine. But the fact that Sibi died to Faeles at the same time makes that trade a lot less favorable for Flashpoint, and Simplicity end up ahead by a little bit, but that's not the only place they're ahead. It feels like elsewhere on the map things are going pretty well for them as well. I mean, their gold lead is up to about 500 to 600 right now. Seems like StreakUp's having a pretty good time in the duo lane.
Well, Kespainify just ticked in at level 7, but StreakUp has been level 7 for a little bit, probably about half a level or so over Kespainify right now, and Chronos definitely has a lot of push power potential if left alone in that dual lane, which might actually end up being the case here because Faeles, Genetics, and Dzoni, Fusify, they've already made it evident that the action's probably going to be taking place more often than not in the jungle or near solo.
Yeah, StreakUp's had this Chronos ban away from him a lot so far this year. Definitely a comfort pick that a lot of teams are noticing and taking away from him. Not Flashpoint here, at least in game 1. Kespainify feeling the repercussions of that. He's down below half HP again. Pushed underneath his tower. But the Chronos has become very popular in the European minor league, as has this new Wa. I mean, we saw it first picked over Merlin last game, Taco. What's the deal with this pick?
I think it might also just be player preference. Warty, for example, in the last game, I think just feels really comfortable on the new wall, and also like the fact that it could provide global vision for team initiations. Hold that thought, though. This Faeles, seeming as though he wants to go into FaraKrik, will force that new wall ultimate pretty early also.
Kraken was on the other target, though Faeles does find FaraKrik. Dzoni gonna use that last breath, or he's got the last breath on him. He's gonna use that through the Cosmos to at least threaten Faeles, but you could tell he was not worried whatsoever. That was all Fusify starting that off with a blink stun onto a full health Pele, and Faeles just said okay. I mean, he didn't have to worry about anything at all.
Faeles just turned around and kind of sucker punched him in the mouth. I don't think that Fusify or FaraKrik was expecting that amount of burst damage so early on from Faeles, because he hasn't really been trying to be proactive with his initiations. It's mostly just been responses from Simplicity so far, but responses that are getting the better end of Flashpoint every time.
Especially in the mid lane now, as DeathPanter's up a level and a half or so over FaraKrik, and that's exactly where Poseidon wants to be, ahead in the early game, using that Kraken for pressure and getting early kills. FaraKrik, I mean, you expect to fall behind a bit on Nuwa, but it's already getting a little bit concerning. He's down 800 gold at this point, and that's quite a bit to be down in 8 minutes.
I think it's the goal that I'm more concerned about than the experience disparity, even, as Faeles procures those right side mid Harpies for Simplicity, despite Flashpoint trying to contest. And I think also if FaraKrik continues to fall steadily behind DeathPanter, well, DeathPanter's already got his Spear of the Magus online. His ability damage is definitely going to only rise at this stage, and with FaraKrik only having those pen boots online for the new wall, I'm just not certain that jungle farm contestation will necessarily go in Flashpoint's favor either, because it will be easier, I think, for DeathPanter to kind of zone away Flashpoint with that AoE from the Whirlpool.
Absolutely, especially now with the Spear of the Magus, which is a good, fairly cheap option in the mid lane, especially for Poseidon. It's the most effective power that you can get at this point in the game, because penetration always worth more than power. Fails the Volcanic Lightning in the mid lane, and FaraKrik never even gets off the ground. This Pele, man, for Faeles. I was saying I'm looking for Dzoni and how he's going to do in the early stages, and Faeles, much more accustomed to playing the early game pressure junglers, is making it look that way. He's looked great.
I think that FaraKrik also was not expecting this level of pressure, as Fusify now going to get gobbled up by Genetics, just spotted out, and that's all it takes, a split second of getting hit by that last breath to give DeathPanter the easy Whirlpool Kraken setup. And Flashpoint, they're not even looking safe in their own jungle, and we're only approaching the 10-minute mark.
DeathPanter very low. This ultimate will be enough. FaraKrik gets the skillful kill. Always a good feeling when you're playing that new wand, are able to pick that up. Good feeling for Dzoni as well to get the assist, but now he's in a lot of trouble. He actually uses the purification beads. Genetics doing plenty of damage still at this stage of the game, but at least Flashpoint able to get something going in their favor.
A little bit of a delay and kind of a breath of fresh air for FaraKrik, at least in that mid lane, knowing that he'll be able to at least get one wave safely, or, you know, maybe even two. I do like that Simplicity were able to defend their own buffs despite losing their mid laner. Flashpoint still not feeling confident enough to try and play aggressively into Simplicity's jungle.
That's that threat of the Ratatoskr, I believe. But I like Simplicity's game plan. They probably came in and said, look, let's just beat him in the early game because Dzoni's going to play something late. Dzoni isn't, but they're still sticking with the plan. Early game pressure coming from Faeles in particular. It's been a part of each kill so far for Simplicity. 3-0 and 2, exactly where he wants to be. But that being said, Dzoni's staying pretty even in farms so far. Only down about 100 gold and the same in XP.
But I do think the main difference between these two styles of jungle play is that Dzoni has been prioritizing only farm in comparison to Faeles, where he's been able to get the best of both worlds. He's missed out on just a little bit less farm than Dzoni, but he's also just established so much map pressure already for Simplicity and kind of sent a message early on to Flashpoint that, hey, whenever your buffs start to respawn, we're probably going to be trying to invade them. So even if Dzoni stays relevant in his level and experience, that doesn't necessarily mean that the same is going to be provided to FaraKrik or Kespainify even. Eventually that trickle-down effect is going to start to come into play if this pressure is maintained from Simplicity.
StreakUp with the Warlock staff. Love DeathPanter's positioning here, as far away from the opposition as possible. Genetics able to find a Cobra's Kiss, even through the stealth in the fog. But here's a blink in, triple stun onto everybody from Simplicity, and Sibi's here as well. Dzoni might want to keep this fight going, but also could elect just go for the red buff. Actually, he'll back it all the way up because here comes StreakUp, and Fusify's gonna get eaten alive by the Kraken in last breath. Genetics still looking for more. Sibi was the target, but just a little bit too tanky. The maniac looping around, has Dzoni in his sights and gonna meet him with that Excalibur's Wrath. CC chain not there because FaraKrik has a nice stun on the Genetics. So for what looked like a fight that Flashpoint wanted to start, ends up Simplicity ahead.
FaraKrik was ready to stop that play the moment it began. He'll save the life at least one of his teammates, but still, it's just so forced, and Faeles actively trying to pursue more, gonna get gobbled up instead by FaraKrik's Nuwa ultimate one more time there. Dzoni able to respond and make something out of nothing.
Faeles just a little bit too far forward, used to maybe the sustain that Pele can bring in those moments, but not quite as strong as it used to be. That's a pretty big death, I'd say, for Faeles, because if he's able to stay on the map, keep farming, keep getting momentum, that's been a big part of the success of Simplicity thus far.
And it also provides FaraKrik with much needed golden experience to catch up that 700 to 800 gold disparity that was once underway. I don't think it's nearly as threatening any longer. And I'm also curious when it comes to DeathPanter whether or not he's going to choose to try and pursue a more utility-based style of play on the Poseidon, knowing that he's got StreakUp to kind of rely on for just that raw mage burst.
Yeah, I think that I like the idea of a utility here. I think Divine Ruin is exactly what he should be going. It's going to be a Shaman's Ring most likely, though it could be Demonic, I suppose. We've seen other Poseidon players go for that in the past. But I imagine that's going to be a Shaman's Ring. But overall, I think that if he goes Divine in this spot, he's doing so much damage to the tanks, and Fusify won't be healing as much. Dzoni and Sibi have incidental healing as well. I think anti-heal isn't must-have necessarily, but I think it certainly would have helped.
And it also prevents, I think that if Simplicity were to rush a Divine early, it could definitely continue to harm Flashpoint because they're already somewhat struggling to just meet the initial responses of the burst damage that Simplicity has in the early game. So if there's a Divine Rune on top of that, then Flashpoint's going to get even more choke pointed, I think, inside of the jungle.
DeathPanter probably feels like he doesn't need a Divine Ruin because Genetics is ulting Fusify every fight, and that's anti-healing him for him. Speak of the devil. And there he shall be. Fusify falls easily. The combo yet again. Dzoni tried to get up and get in range to assist, but the burst damage just too strong. The game plan of kill Fusify a lot has gone over pretty well so far for Simplicity.
We touched on it at the very start of this cast that, hey, there's a possibility that Fusify might just be made the target, and Simplicity just approaches this match with a kill the tank mentality, because killing the tank means you get a completely uncontested Gold Fury, and now with this duo side of the map completely freed up, Simplicity can just have Genetics and Faeles focus a little bit more on trying to suppress FaraKrik one more time.
FaraKrik still behind, but not by nearly as much as he used to be. Has been able to catch up just a bit. Nuwa, of course, slow to get off the ground anyways, both figuratively in the way that she builds and literally and when she ults. Takes a minute for her to get up there. Sibi needs no such delay when brought by maniaKK, but this is typical solo laner posturing and no real chance for a kill. But maniaKK goes for the Blink at level 12 as his second relic. Blink Arthur still feels pretty good to me, I would say.
Very initiation heavy, at least for Simplicity, and I like that maniaKK is kind of taking it upon himself to be a heavy initiator for his team, because if he can burn out the relics early on, then that's just going to make life even easier for Genetics, who also opted for the Blink as his secondary relic. He's already got the Shell, so there's some team fighting aspects introduced for all of Simplicity there. And then early Blink, I mean, sometimes we'll see supports kind of sit on that secondary relic trying to make a decision, but Genetics seems pretty convinced that Simplicity just want to be the proactive members this game.
Yeah, I mean, if he just starts blink ulting Fusify instead of having to run at him and ult, then that already seems better to me. That's been the whole game plan thus far. You're not playing Serqet support to wait around a whole lot. You want to be the initiator the majority of the game, so I think blink makes a lot of sense in this game for Genetics, who's potentially hunting a little bit in the jungle. Fusify, not tanky enough, I would say, to withstand this Wombo combo yet. He still needs probably a Spirit Robe is exactly what he needs in order to make sure that doesn't happen to him. But this time the ultimate is hunting for Dzoni. Fusify here with the blink. Kraken still available for DeathPanter, but has not used it yet. StreakUp making the rotation over. That's a level 17 Chronos. That's a lot of farm, and 72 stacks in that Warlock staff. Got him plenty healthy as well as Pyromancer started. Sibi does have blink himself. Genetics getting bursted, and Kespainify will get that kill, but Simplicity get the Pyromancer. It's a matter of who else they lose because of it. Execute not there, but maniaKK still almost certain to fall. FaraKrik's ultimate confirms it. So Flashpoint get 2, Simplicity get the Pyromancer. I feel like Flashpoint are ending up on top here, Taco.
Somewhat. I definitely think that Simplicity just wanted the Pyromancer and were willing to sacrifice Genetics for it because they want both of the objectives off the board. It means that Simplicity now, after Flashpoint have expended everything, they're probably going to just look to play aggressive into Simplicity from the mid lane even. They don't have a tower any longer. That T1 was stripped away by Flashpoint in solo, but I definitely feel like that wasn't Simplicity trying to fight back into Flashpoint. That was Simplicity just being stubborn about wanting an objective and being okay with forfeiting the life of their support and solo laner to acquire that.
Wow, it's Thorns at level 12 for Fusify. Says, if I'm going to be the focus, then I'm going to return some of that damage, but I don't know. I mean, I feel like Shell may let him live through some of these combos. Shell very good against Pele's Volcanic Lightning as well, which normally does quite a bit of damage to your backline. Shell will negate a lot of that. I don't know. I'm surprised by this Thorns pick. Do you like it?
Not really, no. I feel like Fusify has been dying too fast to really get much merit off of the Thorns. I think that Thorns is better left for probably physical hunters also. I don't think it's really threatening against a Chronos when Chronos has that rewind ability. DeathPanter's probably going to be the one most susceptible to that Thorns reflect damage, but even then, DeathPanter's mostly meant, I think, to just try and control the team fights, not necessarily end them for Simplicity outright. And with that in mind, also, Thorns only activates for Fusify. It's not like a Shell, like you mentioned, where it's going to be able to apply to multiple members.
Kespainify has Purification Beads, and he'll use them now. Has to use the ultimate as well. Not even blink needed from Genetics. So good pressure earned on that left-hand side. And that's great timing for those beads to go down, because Oni Fury's about to spawn, though Last Breath is an integral part of the usual combo. Genetics looking for a bit more, but Cobra's Kiss off the mark that time, so nothing doing in mid.
But these are the primary differences I'm noting between when Flashpoint is aggressive in comparison to Simplicity. Simplicity are aggressive because they want Kespainify's relics before the Oni Fury spawns. That way they can threaten him first at this Oni. And it's actually going to be Flashpoint looking to start this Oni Fury, but I think they're mostly just posturing for position.
Well, Sibi's here first, and that's a big reason. So maniaKK is on the way. Bit of a stealth play happening, and blink forward from Fusify. Thorns used right away as DeathPanter does take a pretty big chunk. In fact, he's getting lower, has to use the Aegis, but it's a little bit too early. Kraken's there, but Dzoni is going to be the one to clean it up. He'll exit stage south. maniaKK, meanwhile, doing his best to handle the top side and try and take care of FaraKrik and Kespainify. He gets them out of the fight, and Sibi might be exiting the fight the hard way, though his Fatal Strike does let him reposition. StreakUp, level 20, and plenty healthy. Sibi, not so much. Big damage coming from maniaKK now that he has the Void Shield. In Simplicity, end up 2 for 1.
And I feel like that fight was false for Flashpoint. It was very alluding into the idea that Flashpoint were going to win the engagement, but in reality, they were entirely too deep. I feel like Dzoni and Fusify really forced that pick onto DeathPanter because it felt like they reached a stage where they're like, we've committed so much already, we have to kill this Poseidon. But then by the time Dzoni cleans up DeathPanter with that 3 Cosmos, he's in a T2 tower. He's entirely too deep to try and escape, as Kespainify escapes with an airstrike away from that last breath one more time.
Man, that knock-up actually ended up making StreakUp CC miss. Stop time just a little bit far left. And that was enough to let Kespainify off the hook again. That last breath is now down. DeathPanter back and healthy. Now he's got Soul Reaver as well, but no relics for him. That might be enough to scare them off the Oni Fury. Indeed it is. But man, StreakUp on this Chronos. Someone's got to find an answer eventually, Taco. Level 20, fully stacked Warlock staff. I don't know what the answer is, but hopefully Flashpoint have one.
I think you've already gotten your answer. It's a fully stacked Warlock staff. That takes some time to get online, and I just don't think that Dzoni looked to pressure StreakUp nearly as much as he probably should have with this Ratatoskr. Rat also probably one of the better assassins for trying to handle a Chronos, because sure, you might not necessarily kill him the first time you visit the lane, but at the very least you could force out that rewind, and I think that the rewind was a big part of the reason why StreakUp could afford to shove to Kespainify's tower line during the laning phase and just keep Kespainify confined underneath that T1.
Genetics finally releases that ambush. Was lying in wait for quite some time. 9-6 Simplicity in the lead, slightly in kills, also slightly in gold. 4,000 at this raid is a noticeable lead, I would say. It's not a massive one, but it is noticeable. XP, on the other hand, a little bit more even, I would say, in the most part. The real difference is the solo laners, Taco. maniaK's up 2.5 levels or so.
It's just the front line that's kind of suffering on Flashpoint side of things. Both Sibi and Fusify are about 1.5 to 2 levels underneath their direct opposition, and with that in mind, Simplicity kind of understand that they have just the outright item and experience advantage to send Genetics and maniaKK further forward and know that they'll survive.
Genetics, you can tell, really looking for that initiation, though he does have the blink now. Oni Fury down to half HP. Genetics surges forward and Flashpoint reset, only to pick it right back up again. Only to reset, only to pick it right back up again. Only to reset.
Are they going to reset and pick it right back up again?
They sure are. They're using that Odysseus bow proc from Kespainify to do a whole lot of damage to Genetics. Roughly 80 or so each time. StreakUp thought about it, but he will reset. Oh, they're thinking about it again. And they're reset.
Well,
now we're not resetting, we're blinking in. Fusify gonna find the beads from StreakUp. There's the last breath onto Fusify, but DeathPanter doesn't want to Kraken because of those thorns, and maniaKK gets insta-killed on the backside. Never even got a chance to use that ultimate. Now Flashpoint gets to surge forward. Sibi still looking for a bit more onto Genetics, but that might have been enough. The thorns end up dissuading the Kraken, Taco, and that was the whole point of the pickup. They've worked thus far.
But it's not over just yet. DeathPanter going to use the Purification Beads, and the Kraken has come out from Dzoni, forcefully making that ultimate his own. Genetics, though, still looking to challenge on that Gold Fury, and Kespainify wants to keep it pooled.
Yes, the blink walk. That's a classic. Faeles looking for Fusify, and he'll find him with Volcanic Lightning by the red buff. Now finding Kespainify as well. It's a double kill for Faeles. He does fall to Dzoni, but FaraKrik uses the Purification Beads as the rest of Simplicity arrives. The cavalry is here, and that should be enough for the Oni Fury to go their way. Initially, it looked like it was Flashpoint's win. maniaKK dies very early on, doesn't get anything off, but the rest of Simplicity was healthy enough. They're able to stay local and end up forcing Flashpoint off the objective.
I think it was mostly just Fusify not being able to kind of go DeathPanter into using that Kraken while the Thorns was active. I mean, Fusify was sent in as the primary distraction clause, and yes, that leads to a successful pick onto maniaKK because Flashpoint just swarmed that King Arthur the second he showed up, as they rightfully should. It's just that Simplicity kind of just waited things out, and once Faeles was able to make the successful flank from the backside, Flashpoint just didn't really know how to respond because they had spent so much time getting their health kind of chunked away from that Oni Fury.
Now Faeles able to find that exact same style it's going to be even better for him as he finishes off the Blood Forge. It is kind of crazy that in the middle of the game, you can forge a blood from your enemy's shield and end up getting a big health shield because of it. That's nuts.
It's kind of gladiator style if you think about it.
Yeah, it's intense, man. I mean, who has the time for that is my question. Dzoni doesn't. He's going to head back and get the Pyromancer low. Blink forward, though, from maniaKK. Flashpoint still able to secure it, but maniaKK continues to push forward. Fusify with a blink 4-man stun from Artio. Cracking that time. No dissuading that. DeathPanter sets it up, and Faeles puts him down. Sibi is able to escape on just a sliver of HP as Simplicity lose the objective, but take the team fight. And now they've got a couple options on where they want to go. Mid-tier 1 seems to be objective A.
Sibi also lost his blink on that disengage, really concerned that Simplicity was going to continue giving chase, and the Pyromancer haven't been taken by Simplicity. Every objective this game, every main map objective has been claimed by Simplicity, and I think that while we've seen some decent responses from Flashpoint in terms of kills, we need to start seeing responses in terms of the objectives.
Yeah, I mean, overall, Flashpoint has not looked like their usual selves. Fusify 0-6 right now. Dzoni, bottom of the player damage charts this late in the game. That's exactly the opposite of what we're used to seeing, where in the early game he might be down there, but even then he's usually not. By this point in the game, he's almost certainly making plays, and Ratatoskr just may not be the fit right now, though. Flashpoint is going to get something. They answer a tier 1 in mid with a tier 1 in mid of their own. But at this point, Simplicity has extended their gold lead up to 4,500. It's about the same as it was before. Little bit higher than the last time we checked in, but still a noticeable lead. The XP difference also still a little bit noticeable on those frontliners, as you mentioned.
I think that Dzoni's scoreline is also deceiving within its own right. He is 3-1-5, has been a participant of 8 or of every single one of his team's kills, but mostly just been local to the area and kind of looking to do cleanup crew. I think we've mostly just been seeing a lot of last hits. Player damage also kind of alluding to that same mentality. It's only at 5,500. So this early game Ratatoskr really was not able to have that same kind of early game impact that you would normally anticipate. And I definitely think that no matter what kills you're able to respond with, in the end, you really need to have some kind of a lead built up for investing so much into early game resources. I definitely think that Sibi and Dzoni both were not able to really kind of snowball in the sense that I think Flashpoint was aiming for.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the Ratatoskr ultimates have been very counter-engage heavy, focus on moments like that. Dzoni gets his dash blocked, so he's going to need to ult. Fusify actually blinks in, as does Sibi, as now he's looking for DeathPanter. Good damage there, actually nearly doubles his player damage, it felt like, in that moment. But maniaKK, again, falls first. Now it's Faeles in the back line. He does get one, but even with the shield forged from the blood of his enemies, it's not enough to get him away from Kespainify. Flashpoint now in double digits on the scoreboard, and they're looking for a little bit more in the mid lane. maniaKK has just been eviscerated so far this game.
He's been melting, is what's been happening. He tries to stand up against the whole of Flashpoint, but FaraKrik actually not going to exist any longer because the DeathPanter's cracking.
Yeah, I don't know how that one happens, Taco. I mean, he had both relics up. You gotta pull the trigger on that. Genetic's gonna blink forward. Fusify in trouble now. He's dead to right. StreakUp finds his second kill. And that's just a head scratcher to me. I mean, DeathPanter with a great ultimate. You're supposed to be getting 2 sets of Aegises there. He only got 1, so he gets a kill instead in the other spot. If that's an Aegis from FaraKrik, maybe they still lose the fight, but probably not that hard.
I almost feel like FaraKrik didn't realize the Kraken was happening. I can't think of any other reason why he wouldn't use beads or the Aegis, but Sibi gonna get controlled right now, forced to Fatal Strike away. maniaKK, though, still looking to give chase and StreakUp all this movement speed on the Chronos, having no problem catching up.
Sibi dead. Genetics with his first of the game, though certainly not the first that he's been a part of. He is now 1-1 and 12 on the Serqet support. As back to the Enhanced Fire Giant. go Simplicity. Dzoni gonna use the ultimate, as will FaraKrik. That'll do decent damage, but DeathPanter has the Aegis ready. Dzoni off the mark on that ultimate, so is Faeles. Fire Giant getting low, and Kespainify nearly got it, but it is Simplicity that just barely secured the EFG. But man, was that close.
I almost wish Dzoni would have saved that last through the Cosmos to jump on top of the enhanced Fire Giant instead of looking to knock up StreakUp. I think that he was aiming for StreakUp right at the very tail end of it. And after he missed, it put all the pressure onto Kespainify, hoping for a steal. But from the get-go, that should have probably been Flashpoint's objective to start anyway. That T2 tower push that looks so promising to begin with ends up being, I think, the start of a possible downfall for Flashpoint in Game 1.
DeathPanter's cracking right there, man. It was huge for this squad. And now it's Simplicity with all the momentum. FaraKrik all alone. He has to use the purification beads. And Genetics invested next to nothing. A great start to this siege opportunity for Simplicity.
FaraKrik just has to assume that if Genetics is running at him underneath his T2 tower by himself, then everybody else is probably about to follow suit.
Yep.
And without any vision to let him know, Flashpoint's mid laner just gonna have to sit tight for a little bit and pray that he's safe in the back line.
Yeah, I've got no problem with the beads there from FaraKrik. You're right, he has no information. There's no real wards over there. He couldn't have been able to tell if he was about to die or not. He has to do it. It's just a good play from Genetics to put himself in that position. And Simplicity secure themselves a Pyromancer. 3 tier 2 towers left standing though. And surprisingly enough, Flashpoint seemed like they want to defend the tier 2s. I don't think they really give you a whole lot at this point, Taco. Maybe not all the tier 2s, as they let the right one go. Okay, now they're starting to back up. I was going to say, there's no way to defend tier 2 here, right?
I think if FaraKrik hadn't lost his purification beads, Flashpoint would be very willing. They might just be looking for whatever poke they can acquire onto Simplicity, and if it could possibly be a pick, then they might keep jumping forward, but StreakUp is just destroying these T2s with his autos, and that was, I don't even think the minion wave was involved. That was just off of Enhanced Fire Giant backdoor protections being, or helping out there, I think, and with or without the waves, I mean, Chronos just seems to melt these towers.
Faeles spotted. Blink in from Fusify, but his Magi's Cloak gives him a hand. But a quick disengage. No, not from maniaKK. He's looking for Kespainify, who again is in some trouble, but he's able to dash away. Dzoni now up into the Cosmos. And Simplicity has taken a whopping total of 0 damage in this fight. They get a couple ultimates out, a couple relics. And now they're in a much healthier position. Sibi, not so much. Good attempt from Genetics to block that Fatal Strike. Kraken gonna knock up Fusify, and he's down to a sliver of HP, but FaraKrik's able to keep them at bay with those fire shards. Genetics with a cute little taunt underneath that tier 2, or underneath the Phoenix rather. And that's not enough to break the base. Sibi and Fusify end up surviving by just a hair.
I feel like Faeles should have probably been a little bit closer to the core of his team there. Probably would have seen 2 picks happen for Flashpoint, but I understand that it was Faeles and maniaKK, I think, also looking to try and possibly kind of fake out Flashpoint into thinking that there was going to be some mid lane pressure, and then hoping that Simplicity would be able to capitalize on the left side Phoenix while that mid wave was being pushed up. But either way, I think that it's still an overall win for Simplicity. They get a chance to back now and look to spend some of that gold that they just received. Fire Giant will be wearing off pretty shortly, and it's going to be time for the next Enhanced Fire Giant dance to take place. And I think that I can definitely see Flashpoint looking to fight here.
Absolutely. This is exactly where teams have made a lot of their comebacks. Is down 10k gold or so, about 35 minutes in. An Enhanced Fire Giant there is your 6th member to deal a lot of damage to your opposition and make up that 10k difference. I think this is a great point for Flashpoint to be aggressive. Sibi in particular needs to be concerned about how much damage this Chronos is doing to him. The late Void Shield as well. I mean, he's trying to up his damage, and they say you have to respect that. Dzoni needs to respect this damage in the mid lane. Fails, doesn't use the Volcanic Lightning. That may have been enough to get the kill on the Dzoni, but better safe than sorry.
Genetics might just be hunting down Dzoni on his own accord instead. Doesn't have that last breath, gonna have to rely on the Cobra's Kiss and a good Death Bane, plus an auto probably if he wants to kill Dzoni, but more importantly, Genetics chasing Dzoni means that he doesn't get a chance to back to full health and try to help the rest of Flashpoint challenge the Enhanced Fire Giant. It's already down to 20%, DeathPanter's gonna crack it at any second here, and Simplicity has it.
Just in time, but great ultimate for FaraKrik. DeathPanter down to just a bit of HP, but Simplicity on full reset mode from this position. Even Faeles expends the blink in order to make sure he's out of danger. But Simplicity rolled the dice a bit, though it's certainly weighted dice in their favor. Good secure by DeathPanter. And you're right, I mean, Dzoni having to go back to base late, and especially without through the Cosmos, really does take a lot of that fight potential away from Flashpoint.
Essentially left Flashpoint in a 3v4 situation, because Genetics wasn't a part of the challenge on Enhanced Fire Giant either, so it's not like Simplicity could rely on their Serqet to help them out. It's just that Flashpoint's front line didn't really seem comfortable, or Fusify didn't really seem super comfortable with trying to jump in there by his lonesome. And I can't blame him with how often DeathPanter has been investing the Kraken to this Artio. I almost feel as though Fusify can't afford to be the initiator here, but if that's the case, then who's left to take over? Well, then you start to look at Sibi or Dzoni, but these two also have been folding like paper, and I think it's largely just because of the fact that Sibi might have needed to prioritize some magical defenses a little bit sooner.
Agreed. It's just been a problem for him so far. There's no doubt about that. The engage, definitely a problem here for Flashpoint. They just don't have a lot of it. They really are looking at Dzoni to be the priority. As StreakUp and Faeles in the mid lane, the rest of Simplicity hovering around mid and left side. The usual split up, but not usually 3 and 2. It's usually 4 and 1. Though StreakUp doesn't need a lot of minions to get the job done. So there's some poke damage on the Phoenix in the left, but not a lot. Wherever StreakUp is the Phoenix that I think needs to be prioritized, because he's the one dealing the majority of the damage.
Well, I just feel like the tensions are rising here, Aggro, and Simplicity just feel prepped to pounce. They are waiting for their opening, and this Oni Fury Wave could be it. Flashpoint, though, taking their time, still looking to clear. Faeles and StreakUp still trying to posture for position, but FaraKrik's going to eat an Aegis and the beads because of DeathPanter's Kraken.
Still got the Kraken out and survived at that time. Dzoni ends up backing it up. maniaKK doing anything but. He blinks forward and now starts to turn and run as that new ultimate comes through. Getting a bit of sustain from that Enhanced Fire Giant. Won't take too long, these members of Simplicity, to be back and healthy yet again. And this is a great time to reinitiate because you know FaraKrik has no ultimate, no relics. That Nuwa is an absolute sitting duck at this point.
Nuwa is pretty frustrating, though, in the sense that she does a great job clearing out waves, and that's been the main reason why Simplicity have kind of been paying their respects to Flashpoint. They know that Flashpoint definitely has enough burst damage 40 minutes deep into a game, essentially, that they can't exactly just expect Genetics and maniaKK to survive if they send one of them too far into the enemy territory.
Mid Phoenix is the call again. This time it's a blink forward from Genetics, looking for FaraKrik as we expected. Sibi has to use Fatal Strike just to get away, and Fusify is getting shredded on the front side. FaraKrik ends up dying as well to StreakUp, and just like that, the base is broken. Mid Phoenix down for Simplicity. They're trying to make up their mind on whether or not they want to go the Titan or to another Phoenix. Looks like just wait for the minion wave to come in and then look for the Titan.
Flashpoint already understand what they're facing up against, and Dzoni, Kespainify, and Sibi hoping to hold back Simplicity. Dzoni's going into that through the Cosmos, but the Titan is just evaporating.
Kraken, Volcanic Lightning, the whole kit and caboodle, in Simplicity able to secure game 1 in just under 40 minutes. 18-11, but Simplicity was in the lead for the majority of this game, and Flashpoint feel like they have to go back to the drawing board here, Taco, because remember, they've lost a couple weeks in a row now. I believe they've lost 3 in a row, and now they are on the back foot again here against Simplicity.
I honestly feel like Flashpoint had the opportunity to take this game's fate into their own hands, but when FaraKrik failed to Aegis on DeathPanter's Kraken underneath the T2, Simplicity did not mess up again. I really think that Simplicity kind of handed a team fight by maniaKK getting picked too early, and well, it crumbled from there.
Johnny's early game on the Ratatoskr, not quite as strong as his late game on the hyper carries. Let's see what they want to do and see what they did wrong in game 1. For that, we have the desk.
Thanks, Aggro. Thanks, Taco. Finch is totally still here. We're going to try and break down what happened for you in that game, as Simplicity are the ones that come out on top. And for me, totally, it just felt like they didn't get enough from Johnny in this game on the Ratatoskr. But is that how you see it? Is it his job, late game Rat, to be doing more damage? Because he was bottom of the player damage charts.
The problem was that Fusify was just dying every single time on the Artio.
Very
offensive relic selection. The Blink and the Thorns. It was an all-in strategy from Flashpoint that just didn't work out at the end of the day. DeathPanter on the Chronos was just, or I'm sorry, DeathPanter on the Poseidon, StreakUp on the Chronos was just thriving as a result.
They had way too much damage. I think accelerated by how great of an early game Genetics had. I was really impressed by how well he played this Serqet. And right into a Genetics clip. Good job back there, fellas. He's the one that absolutely was getting it done for them and got them to the point where DeathPanter and StreakUp could start bringing all the damage home. And DeathPanter really was using these Krakens perfectly, it felt like, throughout these games. On to Fusify as often as possible because he didn't have beads, but on to other targets where they could secure the objectives, where they could burn someone who didn't have Aegis. It just was well timed.
And this Fire Giant over here that was being secured, I believe it was DeathPanter that found it. No, actually Simplicity does confirm it, even though Achilles was there with the stun.
Very, very close. It might even have been a tick of the Whirlpool after the Kraken. It was hard to tell in that case, but just a big game all around for everyone on Simplicity. And now Flashpoint, I mean, they have a couple of things to consider. This King Arthur comes through for maniaKK, and he looks strong on it. Sibi had some struggles on the Achilles. Yes, Johnny was a part of 10 kills. I mean, he was definitely always there in the game, but I mean, even below Fusify in terms of damage this game, I just don't know if that's enough from your star player either.
Something I was seeing in the builds was there was no runic shield at all. No adaptations being made by Sibi in the solo lane to limit the magical power out of this Chronos Poseidon that was just really dominating in the late game. Very scary to deal with. Both of them over 23,000, but just not enough compared to Faeles over almost 26 rather.
Yeah, he was so patient that game too, was Faeles, holding his ultimate, picking its momentum to go in. They had that gank in the middle lane where up into the air went the new wand. He was having trouble catching back up to him, so he patiently waited right by the tower line and was able to kind of snipe him out there too. It was a really well-played game for just about everybody on Simplicity, and this is part of what can make this team so scary. They have a number of guys who can step up for them at any point, and even if you're not the one stepping up, like, you know, I don't know if StreakUp was the star of this game, but he had an excellent game on this Chronos either way, right? That's what makes this team so scary.
It was also because of genetics on the Serqet. It's funny that he goes for the defensive relic, playing the more aggressive character. The Serqet more known for diving those backlines, but he opts for the Shell Fusify, and the Artio goes for the Blink Thorns, trying to make something happen in the backline, but it just wasn't happening for him. No matter how many times he tried, he was just on the chopping block of all the Krakens.
And I'm just not sold on this Nuwa pick yet either. I mean, I don't know. It feels like it's such a narrow area where this Nuwa is the best mage pick that you can be having for yourself, because they're picking it early enough where there's a ton of other strong stuff. It's just